everybody, and welcome to HackerKast. This is White Hat Security's HackerKast. I'm here with Robert Hansen and Matt Johansen. You know, your names kind of rhyme there. Never noticed that before. And we're here to talk about all the cool things that happen.
What are we in fourth grade here, JR? What's going on?
Hey, we graduated. We're okay. I don't know about college, but actually, Matt's the college graduate among us.
That's true.
My diploma's in a box in the corner of it.
All right, let's talk about some application security stuff. All kinds of cool stuff happened over the last week, so let's jump right into it. Let's talk about this Instagram sock puppet thing. I think Matt was covering that one, right?
Yeah, so this one's pretty funny, and I wanted to cover this one because I have a little bit of backstory here on it. I'll try to be quick because it's just a little fun story. But for those of you who use Instagram, it's this massively popular photo sharing site that Facebook bought, so it is actually a Facebook company now. And you know, I use it and I share, you know, funny pictures of my dogs or whatever I do on there, right? And for like a week, they were notifying you. They said, hey, your follower count might drop drastically here soon because we're about to crack down on spam. Like, we're going to get rid of all these robot, you know, sock puppet accounts, as this article calls them, right? And you might see your follower count drop, right? I think I lost like 15 followers or something like that, but it turns out that some like pretty high-profile Instagram account, well, so-called high-profile Instagram accounts went down to near zero.
I wonder if it's because of, like, you know, when you quick think, were everybody that was following them sock puppets, or did they just ban a whole bunch of accounts that weren't sock puppets?
I don't hear anyone like screaming and carrying their pitchfork saying "Give me back my account" yet, so I'm pretty sure it was probably just some sort of padded follower system, right? But the kind of the little bit of backstory that I have here is I was actually in contact with Instagram's security team over at Facebook, and some of those guys probably like 3 weeks ago now, and I was writing them. I said, "Hey guys, I've noticed a giant uptick in new, like, very obvious spam, like scantily clad women with gobbledygook like screen names, and they all follow the same exact template of like these 10 photos, and then this very, very similar, like, you could tell it was just like a auto keyword generator for their bio. It was like food lover, dog enthusiast. Like, it was just like noun, adjective, like. And it was pretty funny. I was like, oh, these should be really easy to spot. And so I was reporting them as, you know, inappropriate spam as I went. But I wrote the guys over there. I said, hey, you know, is there anything I could do to like help you guys collect these things? But the most interesting part that I thought about them was that in each profile there was a link, right, some URL, and they weren't even like bit.ly links or shortened links or anything. They were like legitimate sounding domain names, right? Like, and for all intents, I didn't click on any of them and in a VM or do anything, look at the malware that they were trying to spread, but they were all like legitimate domain names followed by some fake like path to a PHP file. Right? So I was like, okay, they're just like, these are just hacked WordPress sites or something that these people just plant a file somewhere in a legitimate website's directory and then put them in an Instagram spam account and then try to spread it that way. I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Huh.
Massive scale too. I was getting dozens a day after a certain point, and it was going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's when I was like, I gotta write these guys and see if they know what's going on. They have the right heuristics in place to catch this. But yeah, it looks like they did. It looks like they just, you know, hit millions of them at the same time instead of one by one. So,
you know, that's an interesting problem. How do you do a sock puppet algorithm detector? Like, how do you tell which accounts are sock puppets and which are not? I mean,
these were super easy. These were like, you know, like I said, the same exact thing over and over again. So that was super easy.
I actually wrote an entire book on this, Jer, called Detecting Malice.
These were the same, like, noun, adjective, link, right?
Okay, so now you've raised the advertising, so where can we get this book, Detecting Malice, Robert?
DetectingMalice.com. Good ask, Jer.
Excellent.
I
Okay.
have an ad network that we could, help promote that for you.
All right, let's move on here. Let's go on to the headline here. Says high-ris photos beats biometric 2FA. This particular story was pretty interesting. This came out of the Chaos Computer Club's. It's a conference, 31st annual conference. A bunch of high-end security research always comes out. But so this particular research here is they wanted to, I guess, duplicate fingerprints, and particularly high-profile people. And what they showed is how you could take a high-res photo of somebody's fingerprints. Maybe they're doing a speech or wherever they happen to be. They take it from different angles, and then they manufacture a fingerprint out of it. They were able to replicate it and beat two-factor authentication, like thumbprint readers and things like that. And I think they went after how do you pronounce her name? The German chancellor. Merkel,
yeah.
Merkel, and they duplicated her fingerprints based upon public speeches that she's done. This is pretty wild, actually.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another reason why you can't trust that type of biometric. In fact, I would say at this point that type of biometric has been beaten. Like, you shouldn't use it anymore. Thumb or fingerprint readers, for two reasons. One, your thumbprints are everywhere, and two, pictures of you are everywhere. So, even if you can't get close enough to the person, someone's going to have a high-res picture of you at some point, right?
That's crazy. When you passed along this headline, I didn't read it, and I thought that for sure that it meant facial recognition of a high-res photo, and you hold the face up in the camera. I had no idea that this was about fingerprints. That makes it a little bit more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool. So I guess one thing is speaking of insecure by design, which one's more secure, thumbprint biometrics or the credit card system?
Oh, Jer, I mean, well, I mean, credit cards are not designed to be secure. They're designed to make the credit card companies a lot of money. So in that sense, they do their job very well.
Okay, good enough. Good enough. All right, let's try the next story here. One that's always near and dear to Robert's heart. Anything having to do with China, and especially China and Google. So in this case, we have China blocking Gmail. So Robert, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's actually not clear why they're doing this. I mean, typical censorship stuff. They block a lot of stuff. I mean, they block thousands of URLs all the time. But they decided to block Gmail, which can't have gone unnoticed. So I mean, whatever, they block another site. They do that all the time, like New York Times or whatever. But in this particular case, it is kind of interesting because unlike some like news web publication or whatever, when you block Gmail, you effectively block everyone's ability to email you from Gmail if you're inside China. So this could actually have sort of a wide ripple effect where people actually have to stop using Gmail if you want to mail people inside China for like distribution or manufacturing purposes or whatever. So weirdly, I think China actually does hold all the cards on this one. It's kind of neat.
So here's the question. Like, Google's been trying to make a play at China for a while, and they backed out, and they had a contentious relationship, given the fact that the Chinese government tried to hack them in the Aurora attack. And they don't make any money on Gmail anyway because the advertising in the inbox doesn't really work. Does Google care if that Gmail is blocked in China?
I don't think they care about that part, but like I said, if people start moving away from Gmail just so they can mail their manufacturers, like entire companies who were using Gmail are like, welp, I guess we can't email our suppliers or whatever, that could have a very large ripple effect where they're like, okay, I guess we'll go use Yahoo Mail or Hotmail or whatever and move to their competitors for searches and that kind of stuff.
I guess you might pair this with whatever China-approved webmail provider that there is, and somebody just got a huge bump as a result.
Yeah.
All right, so we got that going on. It's always amazing to me, like, another site gets blocked in China. It almost seems like why isn't the whole country using like VPN services and things like that to mask what it is that they use? Maybe it's the technology's still too hard. Maybe it's the blocks aren't that bad. Maybe people get around it, but it just seems everybody should be using VPN services to get around the censoring.
Or Tor, speaking of which.
Or Tor. Oh, that's why we have all these Tor stories in here. Well, let's talk about Tor, and I think Robert, you're covering this one also. We got Lizard Mafia launches something called a Sybil attack on Tor. Did they win?
No, they did not. So Lizard Mafia of Lizard Mafia taking down the PlayStation Network infamy from last week, they decided that they were going to tackle Tor. And Tor is something like in China, for instance, if you wanted to contact a server outside China, you use Tor, and assuming they don't kill you for using Tor, it's great for circumventing firewalls and filters and stuff. But in this case, the Lizard Mafia created a whole bunch of nodes, and it turns out a Sybil attack basically is an attack against a reputation system. So if you get enough nodes that agree with one another about reputation, if you get to a sort of a critical mass, you effectively have all of the reputation, or a majority of the reputation, enough so that you can take over Tor, which is a very valid attack. It actually absolutely could work. There were two problems. One, they named everything Lizard Crew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever, like over and over and over again. So it's very, very easy to see them. So that was the first problem. Second problem is they did it really, really rapidly. So if you just went in there and saw a massive bump of like 10% of the nodes in one day, which is exactly what happened, that's a pretty good indicator that that's the crew that you need to go and remove. So you can go nuke them and get rid of the reputation. But I talked with Runa over at Tor, and that attack absolutely will work, but it would take a large amount of time, and you have to have high bandwidth connections, which is something that I think a small crew like Lizard Crew didn't have the time or knowledge to pull off.
Now, one thing we did discuss is who is Lizard Mafia? What do they do? You mentioned a little bit about the guys that knocked down the PlayStation Network and the Xbox Network over Christmas, I guess to prove a point. But I thought it was pretty funny that we saw that they go after Brian Krebs a lot. The Krebs on Security, the reporter, they try to DOS his site all the time, and he calls them out as cowards and things like that. The drama is pretty thick here, but essentially what we know, or at least what we think we know, is a small group, looks like teenagers, young 20-somethings that have large botnets, and they're pretty powerful. They've knocked down some pretty high-end services out there. Just shows what DOS is still a thing, and it's pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
You know, we were talking about which stories to talk about, just before we started recording, and we were talking about the Xbox Live and PSN thing. It was like, it's just DOS. It's not interesting anymore.
Yeah, I guess, but the bad guys use it, and man, it certainly is annoying when you can't do your work because the sites are down.
Sure.
If your job entails logging into Xbox Live, I want
your job. All right, let's talk about cool jobs. This we got a minor logic flaw related to conference pricing. So this is how you get cheaper hotels. Matt and I, we love the logic flaws. So Matt, why don't you cover this one?
Oh, I just love logic flaws. You're right. Oh, man. Okay. So this one's about as non-technical as you can possibly get, okay? So if you want to teach your grandma this New Year's Eve how to hack, here you go, okay? If you want to call this a hack, right? So who wrote this blog? Local Foo. I don't know who they are, but they wrote this blog post about how to save yourself some money on hotel rooms. So this is a little business logic flaw that, okay, you are looking to travel to San Francisco this year, and San Francisco has a lot of, conferences that come and fly in. RSA will be there in a few months, and all you have to do is go to these conference websites in these popular cities and find their conference rate, usually under like travel info or something like that. And you can actually book the hotel under the conference rate without actually ever having to sign up or prove that you were even interested in going to that. And in the example they showed, they saved about $200 a night just off of going to this conference website site. So that was pretty cool. But then he did it again and showed that if they do actually ask for proof that you are attending this conference, a lot of times you can sign up for like a free Expo, whatever the lowest free pass is for the conference, and then you're going to that conference, and then you can pass the validation, and you never have to show up to that conference, and you get your couple $100 discount per night anyway. So
and your spam, don't forget your spam. You also get that.
yeah, spam. That's true. Your unsubscribe finger is going to need to be stretched out a little after that. But
is that different than your clickjacking finger? Is it
it's the opposite finger? Yeah.
All right. So quick trick to save a few dollars on going to hotels. We had this other story here that was pretty interesting. This was the ISC website got hacked, I guess a week or so ago. Matt, so what's going on there?
Yeah, this one, man, guys, stop giving me the WordPress blog.
Well, we don't know. We don't know.
Please.
We don't know. We don't know if it is or not.
That's true. Okay, so ISC, for those of you who don't know, they put out all the, a lot of these really massively popular tools like Bind DNS, DHCP, and all these goodies, right? And you guys probably heard of them. And their website was serving up malware this week over the holiday break here, and so the Register put out a warning that if you visited this website recently, you might want to do some scans on your computer, but when they reached out to ISC for comment, it turns out that ISC said, hey, this is just our website, it's just our front-end website, it's just a WordPress, some plugin got popped, and it's all cleaned up now, and that server is completely different than the server that houses all of our crown jewel source code for Bind and DHCP and whatever it is, right? Any of the goodies that they have, different server. Right, brochureware is just in the front, so that'd be great if that's true, and that's all the hack was just the WordPress hack. That's really cool, and but we've heard that one before, right? So
this is a good example of water holing, though. I mean, yeah, sure, it's just ISC Squared's website, but it's also all these sysadmins, because that's who's using those tools, right? All these sysadmins and security guys who now have malware on their machines, or might have malware on their machines. That's really nasty, actually.
And I think they're right. Yes, it's probably just their public website. I believe them that probably DNS and Bind are probably okay. I just think they could have done much better on their response. And saying that no big deal, nothing to see here, move along. I just think that, like Robert said, they could handle the matter a little bit better, because imagine if any other companies said that, like they create really good tools, but hey, we don't care if our production website brochure gets hacked. I mean, that's just not the right way to go about it. That's not a good security stance to take. They could do better.
Absolutely. Just shows, though. I mean, you get a basic default WordPress on a LAMP stack. I mean, that's not. You're gonna get hacked eventually. I mean. You got to do something more than you can't rely on that alone.
But it also shows that a lot of times these old brochure websites get forgotten, and a lot of times it's just hard to keep it up. I mean, it's not a whole lot of hardcore business value there. It's not a hardened target, and then you need resources.
It's disingenuous to call their homepage a brochureware site. It's their homepage. It's the doorway to everything. I mean.
Yeah, it's isc.org. I mean, come on. We've said it on how many HackerKasts now, right? Guys, watch your WordPress plugins.
So is WordPress a reportable vulnerability now? Like you just say, oh, you're using WordPress, you're vulnerable?
It really should be. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, especially default. Because default, it's totally vulnerable to, let's say, the very simplest thing is brute force. You just try a bunch of usernames and passwords on WP-admin, and that's, unless you did something to stop that, it's absolutely vulnerable.
So this is a nice segue into the last story we'll cover. It's an infographic here. Let me share my screen. This one's, I posted this on Twitter and got a lot of retweets. It's a pretty cool page. All right, let's go into this. All right, so. Business Insider has this, it's called the headline here, the world's biggest data breaches in one incredible infographic. And here's the infographic. It just shows you all the company names, and the size of the bubble is how many records that they have lost. Whatever they define records, might be personal accounts, bank accounts, varying types of information, but it just shows you over the years, and the most recent ones are at the top, but it just kind of shows you, if we scroll down here, the number of breaches and the size of these breaches. I mean, let's try the Heartland breach, right? 130 million records. U.S. military, 76 million. I mean, you start to look at this list here and you go, everybody's a target, at least somehow, shape, or form. Everybody has millions of records. Well, most, these guys have millions of records, and it all gets stolen eventually. At the very least, it's very interesting, but also kind of spooky when you look at this infographic of, it is everybody's data is in here, yours, mine, everybody's. And so, what do we do about this?
I think the biggest takeaway I get when I look at stuff like that is, if you store the data, you have to protect the data. And since they don't protect the data, by virtue of storing it, you are effectively giving it to the adversary. So just don't store it at all if you're planning on having a lot of users. Just don't keep it. Don't put it on your premises. Don't have some third party do it maybe for you if you absolutely have to have it. That way you can pass the liability on. But do your best not to store that data in the first place.
It's a pretty tough ask. I mean, we live in a data-centric world. Data is value. Data is money, and maybe they don't. It's kind of ways like you don't protect your money, but it's like it's hard to get companies to delete their data, since they may or may not be valuable today, but they've heard that it's valuable tomorrow.
That's absolutely true. You can't get them to delete it, but you can get them not to store it in the first place. If they just if you just say, look, this is a liability, we shouldn't do it. That's a one-time decision, no big deal. But if it's like 5 years later and you're building an entire business model off of data mining your own data, then absolutely, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're totally screwed.
So yeah, there's just a lot going on here. One of the ones, it's not quite related to this, but it's almost where everybody's playing Russian roulette, especially like the CIOs and the CISOs of the world. I read this survey, this job survey, and the average CIO and CISO, their tenure at a company is 12 to 18 months. So I think they're just trying to survive that tenure to get to their next job. And there's not a whole lot of time for good strategic thinking and business protection. Get some compliance, put some blocking and tackling in place, and hope for the best. And if something happens, jump jobs and go somewhere else. And that's pretty much how it works.
Yeah, it's not just not enough time, but not enough willpower to even try. Because if they start any initiatives while they're there, they're very likely to, anger some senior executives or shareholders or whatever. So just don't even start. That way, nothing bad can happen, and anything within 12 months, you can blame the guy before you. And after 12 months, you're like, well, I was only there for 12 months. I don't know what's going on. They wouldn't listen to me. I told them to do all this stuff, and you can make me pontificate.
It's funny. It kind of reminds me, when your comments there, is when we did one of our stats report from 2 years ago, we're trying to figure out what makes a company secure or their website secure versus not secure. It almost seems to me like some companies did training, other companies did training, but their outcomes were different. It just almost seemed that some companies cared and other ones didn't, and that's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, if you can force your developers to care, if you can force your upper management to care, I think you have a much higher chance of actually being secure. But that's a tough ask. I mean, what makes someone care? Their jobs, yeah. I guess.
I like the stuff that the Twitter security team was doing with SADB. I don't know if you guys remember that, right? Where it was a lot of continuous monitoring of code, and then also a little bit of public shaming of vulnerabilities. And okay, now all of a sudden there's a care culture because everyone sees who's writing the vulnerable code because it's in a public ticket queue. And it was a very sad bee that was the mascot. It was a very unhappy bee that was reporting all these problems to all the developers. And it's one of the best talks I've seen in a long time at AppSec USA in Austin. What year was that? 2013, 2012. And it's still just as viable today. It's called "Putting Your Robots to Work for You" by Twitter. I'll try to remember to put a link in the blog post here. It's awesome. So.
Well, to end on a high note, so I think we're at the end of the day, what we're saying here is that, all the attacks, we look at all the attacks from DOS to SQL injection, attacks on WordPress, we know how these attacks work. We're not getting hit by anything we didn't really previously know about, don't know how to fix, and and how to go after. All we're lacking is the motivation. So it kind of tells us that those that want to be secure, the knowledge is out there, the tools are available, and you can put them to work and actually be really, really secure and hard to compromise. Everybody else that doesn't really care, hey, bad things are going to happen, but we don't have to worry about them. They'll come along eventually. But for those that really want to protect what they got and protect their customers, the data's there, and we can help them get access to that.
New Year's resolutions?
Not yet. How about you? What are you gonna hack now?
I've decided I'm going to shift gear. I've hacked on WordPress for so many years. I think I'm going to switch to Drupal.
that is, you could do better than that.
There's some WordPress or some Drupal security guys that actually work for them that are watching this, just like, they hate you, man.
I think for me, I want to learn about WebRTC, the WebSockets, and all those really high-end new protocols in browsers, because I think just evil lurks there, and I want to find out what it is.
Awesome.
Matt?
Put me on the spot. I want to brew some delicious beer and forget about all the security stuff every once in a while.
Awesome.
How about that?
Brew beer. I think Robert and I can get with that.
Yep. As long as I can have some.
Come on over.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys, and thanks for watching. Please rate and subscribe. We do this every week. Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.